I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Hey, if you were outside today, especially this afternoon, you know it felt sort of damp. I mean, it's a rainy spring day, but the air is so clear. There's not a bit of smoke out there. You can take in deep breaths full of good, clean northwest air. And you used to be able to do that the entire summer. But things, I'm sorry to say, are changing. And that is our big story tonight. All this week, our Environment Northwest team is covering the region to look at our wildfire risks, smoke dangers, and what it takes to recover after the flames are out. Last night, we learned about the expected wildfire risk for this summer from a meteorologist in the Spokane area, and KGW Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino covered the conditions in Oregon. If you missed that, you can check it out on the KGW YouTube channel for the entire segment. Now tonight, growing wildfire seasons have turned smoke into a dreaded staple of Northwest summers. There's a yellow or kind of bluish fog of smoke that can hang over us when the big fires burn. And new research now shows it's more than a temporary annoyance. Erica Zuko explains.
You don't really need a fancy study to know the Northwest is dealing with more smoke these days. We've all felt it.
You can almost feel it as you breathe in, and it's got a little bit of a burn to it.
It doesn't feel any better indoors than it does outdoors right now.
At Overlake Medical Center in Bellevue, Washington, it's meant more calls for doctors and nurse practitioners seeing patients with asthma, COPD, and related illnesses, like Tyler Cook.
That's probably one of our busiest times now. I've noticed this the last couple of years as, we do see a lot of patients in our clinic with chronic lung issues like asthma and COPD.
His patients should be seeing the benefits of cleaner air, thanks to the Environmental Protection Agency's regulations on emissions over the years. But a new study from the University of Iowa says wildfires have erased 2 decades worth of air quality gains in our region. This graphic shows, in red, areas with the worst black carbon pollution. Parts of Washington, Oregon, and Idaho are all on the list. It's an especially dangerous kind of pollution because these particles are so small they can travel deep into the lungs and may even enter the bloodstream.
We might not see it. We can't see these tiny little particles. We can certainly see when there's smoke in the air, but really the impact that air quality has on your lungs.
UW-Bothell air quality expert Dan Jaffe says the only real way to prevent smoke is to prevent fires.
It's a combination of factors of fuel buildup, of climate change, which dries out the fuels, and then people being in the forest.
But there are things you can do to prepare yourself for the season to come. Jaffe and Cook both recommend air purifiers or a homemade device with a box fan and filter. It's best to put one in each room and prepare before smoke season starts.
The air that we breathe, it's paramount to us surviving.
For Environment Northwest, I'm Erica Zuko.
Interesting and sad, too. Investigating wildfire causes is no easy task. Tomorrow, our Environment Northwest team gets an up-close look at the ignition point of a wildfire and talks with investigators about what they look for in the environment in order to figure out how that fire started. Hey, one of the biggest local stories is that it's election night right here, right now in Oregon. Now, I know for a lot of you in Southwest Washington and others who are outside the state, you're rolling your eyes, fine. But I would argue that no matter where you are or when you watch this, the Oregon election is worth following. It's going to be a fascinating look at the mood of the electorate. The public, especially in the Multnomah County, Oregon's most populated county right here. Some of the video I shot with my phone late this morning is out at the Oregon County Elections Headquarters in Southeast Portland. The workers on the sidewalk helping to keep traffic moving told me it was busier today than yesterday. We'll see. As of around 5 tonight, voter turnout still about 22%. One of the biggest local races we're watching is for Multnomah County District Attorney. Will voters blame the current DA for the rise in crime and violence during the last 4 years? A lot of folks think so. Or will they chalk it up to circumstances beyond his control and give him another 4 years? We're also keeping an eye on a couple of congressional races. Whoever wins the Democratic primary for the 3rd district seat, that's Earl Blumenauer's seat, is likely to go on and win in November. And whoever wins in the 5th district primary will take on the Republican Lori Chavez DeRemer, who flipped the seat red 2 years ago. And it could impact the balance of power in the House this fall. We'll get our first glimpse at returns in about an hour and a half or so. But in the meantime, earlier today, what I wanted to know was why did so many voters wait until Election Day to drop off ballots instead of mailing in the ballot a week ago?
Well, I was just telling my mom that. Like, I don't know. I like to read every pamphlet I get in the mail, I suppose.
Me too.
Maybe I'll change my ways in November. We'll see.
All right, take care. I say that every year, but I still don't. One of those shots was me dropping off my ballot along with my wife Jackie's ballot, so yeah, I get it. If you want the best results show in the country, be sure to tune back in live tonight, 7:45, right here for the KGW Election Show. David Molko, Laurel Porter, and friends, including Earl Blumenauer, will break down the results as they come on in. You can watch it on channel 8.2 if you get our signal on an antenna. It's also available on Comcast channel 308. And we'll be streaming the show on KGW Plus, the KGW YouTube channel, and KGW.com. If you miss it, it's because you wanted to, but you shouldn't want to. Still ahead, Portland's inclusionary zoning requirements. It's supposed to set aside a certain number of new housing units for affordable housing. We're a few years into the program, so how's that going? The city auditor looked into it, and there is definitely some work to be done to make sure it's serving the people who needed it. We'll dig into it all when the story returns. Let's talk about housing. 8 years ago, when the city of Portland required new apartment buildings to set aside units for lower income folks, many saw that as a big win for something called inclusionary housing. Now that term means pretty much what it sounds like. Instead of letting high prices exclude lower income folks from nice neighborhoods, inclusionary housing makes room for them by forcing developers to include lower income folks. They do that by offering lower rent units right next to the market rate units when they put up their new buildings in those nice fancy neighborhoods. So, is Portland's inclusionary housing program working? A new report from the Portland City Auditors says basically not really. First, some background. Back in 2015, the city of Portland declared a one-year housing state of emergency. Portland's housing was not keeping up with a growing population, leaving a shortage estimated at 23,000 units. And that, of course, drove prices up. So in 2017, the city launched a new rule. It required builders who were putting up 20 or more units, apartments, to include 10 to 20% of those in low and moderate income households. The program was designed for market rate residential buildings that would otherwise not have it. Okay, sounds pretty straightforward so far. You got to make room for lower income folks in your fancy new apartment buildings going up in safe neighborhoods with good schools and parks and things like that. Developers, they didn't love it. They grumbled about it. But the city insisted it was the right thing to do, so developers basically had no choice. The program had 4 stated goals. First, it would increase the number of housing units available for people making 80% or less of the area median income. Now, I just checked, and currently that's $90,240 for a family of 4. It also wanted to emphasize households earning 60% or less of the area median income, which is currently $67,680 for that same family of 4. Second, leaders wanted to responsibly allocate resources to increase housing opportunities for families and individuals facing the greatest disparities. And then third, create affordable housing options in high opportunity neighborhoods, places with access to good schools, services, and transportation. And then fourth, promote a wide range of affordable housing when it came to size, amenities, and location. Okay, still with me? Back in 2017, the city of Portland wanted affordable housing spread out into the nice neighborhoods, and they forced builders to start including some affordable units in their new projects right next to the fully priced units. But when it comes to the goals that we just reviewed, did you notice anything odd about those? None of them have specific metrics that would allow you to judge whether the program's actually working or not. Well, the Portland City Auditors, working for Portland's elected auditor, Simone Reed, they definitely spotted that, and they were highly critical. That's Reed, by the way, in the picture there. They found the goals were not effective performance measurement tools and did not accurately convey the program's purpose. They went on, the goals were not specific to the program or realistic. And these goals do not indicate the amount of housing the program aims to create. Also, we did not know if the number and location of inclusionary housing units produced through the program were evidence of success. And bureau managers said that by requiring the private market to build 60 and 80% MFI housing, the program frees up money it can use to finance housing for lower income households. However, the Bureau does not track how inclusionary housing has increased those opportunities. So I got to tell you, when I read that, I thought, wow, that is pretty damning for a program the city was darn proud to create. That's basically the auditors saying, you created a program with no firm goals that can be measured. Now, there is some good news in the audit. Let's look at that for a moment. The auditors found that over the past 6 years, 566 apartments in the inclusionary program had been built, and another 1,157 are on the way. And as this chart shows, there are more of those units targeting the 60% range than the 80% range. And the auditors found that 68% of the housing was indeed located in high opportunity neighborhoods, meaning, the nice ones. But if you want to include low income people in the mix, well, the plan failed. The auditors point out that the units were created for those with moderate incomes, not Portlanders facing the greatest economic disparities. So, how's it all work? Well, the program offers developers incentives to include the lower income units, but if the developers really don't want to do that, they can just pay a fee and get out of it. And between 2017 and 2023, developers did. They paid $5 million to not bother with the low income units. So what, you might ask, did the city do with that $5 million? Well, the auditors report that the money was supposed to help pay for more affordable housing development and preservation. What a great idea. Yeah. Well, instead, the fees have gone to the program operating cost. Oh, yes, it did. Other problems include the maximum rent that owners could charge for studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments for people at the 80% level. Well, the auditors found that was already higher than the average market rent that was being charged citywide. And because owners can require renters to show that they make at least 2.5 times the rent, Black and Latinx renters were sometimes excluded even though they qualified based on income and could afford the rent, but they did not make it to that second green line there, which was the 2.5 times the rent. Auditors also found that most owners and managers of the new buildings did not have experience leasing affordable housing, but the city shoved the responsibility for running the programs onto them, onto the property owners. The auditors also found the Bureau cannot effectively detect and consistently address compliance problems. Why? Well, because it's 2 years behind in reviewing and testing compliance data. They also report that 12 different 3-bedroom apartments, which made up 23% of the 3-bedroom units built under this new program, well, they sat vacant for more than a year, and another 11 were vacant between 4 and 10 months. But guess what? The Housing Bureau did not know that because it was not monitoring the new inclusionary units. And there is more, but you get the idea. So, how did the leaders of the Housing Bureau respond? I want to show you 2 different examples here because to me it does not seem to suggest an agency that's willing to take advice and grow. Here's an example. The city's housing commissioner, Carmen Rubio, and the director of the Portland Housing Bureau wrote, "The audit acknowledges the implementation of the IH, that's inclusionary housing, permit, review process, tracking of permit data, and restricting properties with appropriate covenants to ensure compliance has been done successfully." But the auditors said, that's not what we said. And they wrote, outside of testing the reliability of the spreadsheet the Bureau used to track information about buildings and inclusionary housing permits described in the next section, our audit did not examine or draw conclusions in these areas. And here's another example. The city responded to another part of the audit by stating, furthermore, the audit clarifies that additional funding is needed for PHB, that's Portland Housing Bureau, to provide the market rate developers with more educational information and support. And again, the auditor said, no, that's not what we said. The auditor response is, our audit did not review how the Bureau allocates its budget or whether there are efficiencies that could free up funding for program administration, including property owner education and support. And as a result, our audit did not make conclusions about program funding. Now, I know that is a lot to take in, but I think it's important because this is really a major program that's shaping building and developing that's going on in our city right now. The auditors found that new housing is being built, not for the poorest folks, but for the middle income folks in the Portland area, and also that there is lots that can be done to make the program better. As we look for solutions, as we often do now, I think we can point to the City of Portland auditors as a group of solution makers. They take the time, they have the tools to really test whether programs like these are working, and we should all thank them for audits like this. And when programs are struggling like this one clearly is, those auditors give it new guideposts to get it back on track. Now, let's just hope the housing folks are listening. Moving on, coming up, a new kind of court in Clark County. Service providers and law enforcement work together to help people accused of low-level crimes that often come along with homelessness and get them on a better path.
And I'm going to admit, at first, I really didn't think it was going to work. But it did. I'm here.
We'll show you how it works when we come back. Over the past year, the city of Vancouver has been trying something different, dealing with low-level crimes most often committed by those who are homeless. Our Tim Gordon is highlighting this change as part of our KGW Solutions project, where we look for solutions to some of the biggest problems in our community.
The effects of homelessness can be severe for those living on the streets and on the communities where they set up camp. Crimes like trespassing, unlawful camping, and public storage of property leave an obvious mark. Under the typical court system, most charged with these misdemeanor offenses end up with a day of community service and, importantly, a conviction on their record. Add jail time if a defendant doesn't show up. What's happening at a place called the Recovery Cafe on East 4th Plain Boulevard in Vancouver is different.
So you never actually showed up there? You just called?
She just called me.
Okay, yeah.
The city's community court happens every Monday in a cramped conference room with a court commissioner in charge and a whole host of people there to help.
We have a flyer, don't we? We can get a flyer for that.
The result?
Within the course of 2 months, you can see some people's lives really change.
Kevin McClure is the city prosecutor. He's been at it a long time.
And this is 30 years of me prosecuting crimes, and this is one of the most innovative programs I've ever been a part of. So I'm really excited about the court.
That's because this court doles out more opportunity than punishment.
It's rewarding. Like I said, it's like the first time in my career where we're making some concrete steps to actually assist people.
Christy Emmerich is a criminal defense attorney and owner of a public defender's firm. She spent a lot of time in all kinds of courts.
I think this one is meeting people where they're at. The criminal justice system is not designed to help people.
And that, Emmerich says, is why this is so refreshing and powerful.
You look like you've had a rough weekend. Mother's Day is a bittersweet day for a lot of women.
It was a really rough day yesterday.
Yes, and I'm proud of you for showing up.
Thank you.
This woman is struggling, but she's here.
Are you ready for something different?
Oh, yes, we are.
Are you so close? Okay.
Yeah.
As long as you're getting closer.
The other part of me is standing on the ledge, and I'm behind me, and I'm getting ready to shut myself off.
It's scary. It's scary. It really is.
Jumping, I'm about to shut.
And it's not easy, and there's a lot of things that happen, but it's worth it.
As long as she makes progress, there is support with mental health, substance abuse issues, housing, and the smaller things like getting a driver's license. Representatives from various agencies are at the table and set up in the main space at the Recovery Cafe. And the cafe serves lunch. Instead of avoiding court, many participants are eager.
I was expecting somebody else to walk in, so that's all right.
They were still eating, so Albert jumped in front.
This man has several tasks ahead of him, and it's stressful.
It's just one thing after another.
Yeah, well, I know you know where to go.
Yes.
His car needs repairs, and he's got no place to work on it.
I mean, the most we can do, I can help you find a mechanic that will do things cheaper.
No, I did the work myself. I've got all the parts already. I think I need the place to do it.
Not all can be solved here, but a lot can. And every participant is required to do community service, usually cleaning up homeless camps, sometimes taking care of the very mess they made. Those who graduate have their cases dismissed.
And I'm going to admit, at first, I really didn't think it was going to work. But it did. I'm here.
Butch Wood graduated a few months ago. Now he comes back to support others. He's grateful.
Here they treat you like an individual. Court, you don't get treated like an individual. You get treated like a statistic.
Community court is set to expand to serve more defendants. Both prosecutor and defense attorney are on board.
Is it an adversarial relationship at all, or you're just working together?
Like I said, this is a weird little court we have. So kind of for the first time, I think we're more in line than we are opposed.
I think as long as somebody is legitimately trying, we're willing to give them as many chances as it takes.
That's fantastic. That weird little court needs to expand into a lot of places. So far, 86 participants have opted into the community court. Tim tells us nearly half of them have graduated. Some are still in the process. Others opted out or didn't make it all the way through. Of the graduates, about half have gotten into some form of housing as well. Hey, before we go, we want to remind you about our live election coverage tonight, 7:45. David Molko and Laurel Porter and friends, including Earl Blumenauer, will break down the results as they come in. You can watch it in a whole bunch of different places. Channel 8.2 if you get our signal on an antenna. It's also available on Comcast Channel 308. And we'll be streaming the show on KGW Plus, the KGW YouTube channel, and KGW.com. It's going to be fascinating to see how those first results come in right at 8 o'clock. The show goes on at 7:45. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be really good. In the meantime, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. The good stuff's coming up next, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow night.